Within the two videos, 6 gay men versus 1 secret straight man, and 6 black men versus 1 white guy, they depict different identities and showcase interesting examples of performances of one's identity, and question whether the performances are authentic or not. The participants within these groups get to determine which portrayal is the most authentic of their said identity. While trying to figure out who the moles are in each of these videos, the participants discuss a wide range of topics. The topics discussed are a genuine reflection of stereotyping and othering, but also reveal interesting concepts about Western ideas of authenticity or a lack thereof. Before we delve into this analysis, I want to define the term othering. According to Oscar Thomas-Olalde and Dr. Astride Velho, othering is defined as a phenomena of stereotyping and racialization, according to the article Othering and Its Effects, Exploring the Concept. In the article, they quote 2 philosophers, Ickelposh and Radmacher, when they said, quote, "Any form of racism consists of at least 2 elements, knowledge and practices of exclusion. These practices of exclusion require and inadvertently promote constitutions of power." A simple example of othering is when a little kid says, "You can't eat lunch with us because you have stinky food." Not only does this example showcase the racism involved in the act of othering, it also alludes to how the act itself is promoted by the systems that exclude certain groups of people because they haven't properly assimilated to dominant cultural norms. With that in mind, we can delve into the analysis. One of the major themes discussed in the video about race revolves around the challenges that mixed race people face. Mixed individuals' experience with othering serve as a compelling illustration of expectations regarding behavior and the repercussions one faces when they deviate from perceived norms. In Chapter 3 of the book, The Racism of the People Who Love You, written by Samara K. Mehta, she talks about the complexities of identity, authenticity, and belonging, particularly within the context of being mixed and navigating multiple cultural influences. Mehta says on page 70, "Of course, if you are half and half, your performance is always subject to critique by people who are vested in which identity you perform and how you perform both identities, or in demonstrating that whatever you have chosen, you are not doing it well enough." This showcases the expectations associated with certain identities, and the idea that if you don't meet certain expectations, you might not be perceived as an authentic version of whatever identities you do possess. Viewing a mixed person as half and half is a simplistic, mathematical approach to understanding identity, and one that fails to grasp its intricate complexity. When individuals don't neatly fit into predetermined identity categories, they often face marginalization and a crisis of self-doubt, even from within their own communities. Mehta's discussion mirrors the sentiment in her analysis of the scrutiny she faces when being accused of acting white, to which she explains that she was in fact raised by a white mother, which therefore influenced certain aspects of her personality. Some examples of this within my primary source, specifically in the video about race, are when they are talking about which Kool-Aid flavor they drank growing up in one of the rounds, and one of the participants, Rosebud, says grape instead of purple. They all mark him as suspicious because of that. He is the first person voted out, in my opinion, partly because of this interaction. Later, another participant, Brevin, is voted out.
I'm not sure why I got voted out. I feel that a lot of times I've felt that I'm too white for the black people and too black for the white people, but it's okay, it's all good.
These clips reiterate the unfairness associated with expectations of certain identities, and show how mixed people sometimes feel they can't win in any community they are a part of, no matter how they act. But in my opinion, these ideas inherently inform each other. Although one can have certain aspects of their identity that feel entirely innate, their internal biases are still formed by the expectations surrounding how they are perceived. The idea of passing as a certain race also comes into play here, as whatever other people perceive you as is probably the way that they expect you to act. Even so, if one looks entirely mixed, they are still bound by the expectations associated with that identity. This phenomenon also delves into the politicization of race, where individuals are categorized based on societal labels, thus confining them to societal constructs rather than allowing for self-perception. Another issue raised in the video about race is the intersection of race and class. Participants in the video use these markers as ways of identifying people as authentic or inauthentic versions of their identities. A prime example of this is seen when people are trying to decide who to vote out in round 3, and Gabriel, while talking about Brevin, says,
"When it came to Brevin, it seemed like he was privileged, and I relate more to struggle. Hearing some of the things he was saying, it kind of made me think and second guess."
He sees having money as an identifier of privilege, and therefore whiteness. This nuanced analysis sheds light on the systemic oppression that persists against Black communities that actively hinder their professional advancement and success. And yet, in the context of this video, it serves as another depiction of othering someone that might not have grown up in the same way, and renders them an inauthentic version of Blackness. In the video addressing sexuality, the primary focus is on stereotypes surrounding gay men, particularly in relation to their attire. There exists a societal expectation for gay men to dress flamboyantly, and there are many instances in the video that show that expectation being unfulfilled.
Just like the long hair and maybe the clothes, just like very, I want to say, bland.
I saw the On the Run tour jacket that he was wearing, and I thought maybe he was kind of using that to kind of like trick us all into thinking he was like a Beyonce fan. So I was just like, let me get him out.
These quotes perpetuate stereotypes surrounding gay men, and are another example of individuals being punished for not meeting certain expectations regarding their identity. Again, rendering these individuals an inauthentic version of their identity. In each example presented, individuals who do not fully conform to the set of expectations of their identity face marginalization and repercussions. In the video addressing race, we see a paradox where the individual least aligned with the conventional perceptions of Blackness is labeled as one of the most authentic representations. Similarly, in the exploration of sexuality, many men are deemed to fall short of authentic gayness, despite almost all identifying as gay. These instances underscore the daunting challenge of achieving authenticity within rigid societal frameworks wherein you are always already decided to be a certain way. It becomes evident that entrenched expectations and stereotypes often render authentic performances of identity nearly unattainable. I want to point out that these ideas of authenticity stem from Western-centric ideologies that serves the constitutions that created them in the first place. It is hard to apply these concepts of identity and authenticity to other cultures that have completely different sets of expectations or none whatsoever. While this analysis is interesting and informative, it's important to remember that it is extremely applied to Western culture that created these labels and expectations and cannot be easily applied to the rest of the world.